Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness!
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now a three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! John Morant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parish, and here with me right now is Chris Herrington for our every other week home and away series. Chris has been coming on Grits and Grinds. I'm going on the Daily Memphian Grizzlies podcast with him. It was once a month, I guess, is how that works out. Anyway, Chris, how's it going?
Yep. Hey, how's it going? I made you to rethink things since you're going on YouTube. We don't do the YouTube at our house, and so here I am from the bunker-like podcast studio at the Daily Memphian offices. I may have to bring in like some bookshelves and stuff just to make it look more,
You can do one of those. We gotta get you a Zoom filter, and we'll just put like a picture of Nick Calathis or something behind you.
Okay, all right.
I think we could do it.
I'll upgrade my technological aptitude before we do this again.
I was honestly thinking last 2 weeks ago when I was on your podcast that we were recording the Zoom, but I was like, this is just going into the ether. This is not being posted anywhere. It's just wasted content, Chris. You guys got to get in the content game.
Right.
We'll see. Maybe we'll have a YouTube exclusive behind the scenes of Keith on the Daily Memphian's Grizzlies podcast. Anyway,
we'll work on that.
We'll work on the contract language. The Grizzlies had a couple of tough defeats.
Yep.
Maybe just some bad shooting luck. They ran into a Wizards team. Grizzlies were shorthanded. No Ja, no Desmond Bane. Wizards made a bunch of threes. Grizzlies did not make any threes. And then you lose to the rival Pelicans. We're trying to get that rivalry going. A familiar refrain, honestly. I know the Grizzlies took care of business last year, but very few of those games were full strength squads. And the Grizzlies ran into a Pelicans team that made a bunch of threes. And of course, the Grizzlies got Jaren back. Do not have Desmond Bane for a while. What's your impression of the last couple of games? Is it just going to be an adjustment period, learning to live without Bane? Is it bad shooting luck? Is it time to run to the hills screaming in panic?
Oh, I think it's definitely an adjustment period, learning to live without Bane. But I think there's a real question about how much you can adjust. And whether that puts you in a panic mode or not, mileage varies on that. But it would not surprise me if it was a rough few weeks without Desmond Bane. And I think this is not like hindsight. This is something you've talked about too. But I've talked about, I haven't written like an article with a screaming headline, "The Grizzlies have bad guard depth. Look out!" But like I'd mentioned this repeatedly since the summer that they don't have guard depth on this team. They have four actual guards on the 15-man roster. One of those is a 19-year-old second-round draft pick, who's like 6 feet tall. And so he didn't really count to me. And so they basically have 3 guards on the roster. That's not a lot of guards. And so when one of those guys is gone, it's a real problem. And I think, I feel like upside wise, I feel great about this team. I think they could be first in the West if they, if things break right. But part of breaking right is they need core guys healthy, and they particularly need Ja and Desmond. I think they have less functional depth than they did a year ago, and I think they are much less suited to withstand absences. So far we've seen it. I don't think it's fluky. They're 0-4 when they don't have Morant and Bane both on the floor. I think they're 9-2 with both. Like, I don't think it'll continue to be that stark, but I think it will continue to be stark, because I don't think this team has the guard depth or the shot creation shooting depth to withstand the absences of those guys the way they did a year ago.
Right. And this is not, like you said, it's not hindsight.
Yeah.
It was circled. Hey, we don't have any guards. And also our best player, Ja Morant, he's probably going to play 58 games every season in the good seasons or something, or 60, maybe 66 games, somewhere around there. He's going to miss games. They're going to hold him out of some back-to-backs. He plays a reckless, athletic and above the rim and just dangerous. He plays a dangerous style of basketball. And it was obvious on the roster buildup, like, all right, don't have the depth. And if these guys are out, that's where the depth clearly hurts you. And we've seen it. And I'm with you where I don't see a clear solution for the minutes when there is no Desmond Bane.
Well, I just think it's curious. To me, it's curious, and their track record of identifying and developing talent has been terrific. And so I can see like you want to just keep doing that, right? But it's curious to me that given where they were as a team coming off 56 wins, and given that there's a limit to roster spots you have in the NBA, that, you know, going into the draft, people were saying, well, they have 2 first-round picks. They can't use them both. They can't put 2 rookies on the roster. And I was saying, well, of course they can put 2 rookies on the roster. They put 3. Not counting the two-way guys. And it's not just that they put 3 on the roster. 2 of them are very similar in terms of the positional spectrum. They're different games. We'll get into that. But in terms of the positional spectrum, LaRavia and Roddy are relatively similar. And then the other is a 6-foot tiny guard when you already had 2 tiny guards on the roster. And so I think it was a mistake. And again, I said this at the time. I know you did too. I wrote this to this effect. I thought it was a mistake not to let go, not just to let go of Melton and Anderson. That's debatable, but to let them go and not bring in anyone else who could be a veteran rotation player on the team. And maybe Danny Green can be that in the second half of the season, but I'm not sure about that. And even then, he's not really a guard either.
Yeah. So I don't know if I underestimate the inclusion of Danny Green in the Melton trade. I basically broke my Melton silence in the last episode I did,
right? Where
it's like, I don't know how you could even be objective and watch the Grizzlies last game and be like, well, obviously when Bane's out, that's when we need a good backup 2 guard. And depending on Roddy, who's not really a 2 guard, like depending on him, when you're already in the contender conversation, you hope one of the top 5 to 7 teams in the NBA. And to take that step back for a developmental year, or if we're continuing our timeline, it was not a Kyle Anderson situation. It was not a free agent. His contract was not up. It was not we have a loaded front court. It's like, no, we don't have a loaded backcourt. We have elite backcourt. Our top line backcourt might be the best in the NBA when they're healthy. But yeah, it was definitely weird.
Well, the Melton thing was like, it's really a series of 3 decisions. And the first of those is to trade D'Anthony Melton, right? And that alone, you could question that. But even if you were deciding to trade D'Anthony Melton, the second thing is, what are you getting back for him? And then the third thing is, even after that, you still have other mechanisms to use, for your roster. They didn't use their MLE other than mid-level exception, other than use a portion of it for Kennedy Chandler. And they finished right around the cap. They may even be under it. I haven't looked, but and so they ran out of roster spots. They didn't run out of other mechanisms, via trade or free agency, even to replace Melton. And I am higher on Melton. I remain higher on Melton than I think the Grizzlies front office. I may be not quite as high as you still are. These are fine gradations, maybe.
Sure.
But, I understood the idea of trading Melton. In fact, I'd even last year around the trade deadline, I'd even made some Melton trade suggestions. And one of them I had made, and I have no idea whether they could have even done this if they'd wanted to. I suggested Melton and Kyle Anderson for Eric Gordon, which I didn't personally love, but my rationale for that at the time was Melton's hit a glass ceiling on this team. He's going to be the 8th, 9th, 10th man. They don't seem to really be into him the way I am. And they're probably not going to re-sign Kyle Anderson. So trade those guys for a veteran shooter who can handle the ball and make shots off your bench in the playoffs, and would still be with your team next season, either as a good player or as a big expiring contract. And in retrospect, I think there was frankly even more wisdom in that kind of idea. Instead, what they did was they let one walk and they flipped the other for a rookie. And the idea of Melton for a late first-round pick is not bad value. I just don't, what they got out of it, I'm not crazy about. And then the fact that they didn't follow it up even beyond that with just some free agent signing.
Yeah, I still maintain you hope you get a Melton with a late first-round pick.
Yeah, no, that's right.
You already have the thing you hope to get.
He's 24. He's 24 years old.
Yeah, it's like the best case. Like that's a best case scenario for a 22nd or 23rd pick.
Right.
But again, like I was started this with, maybe I'm underestimating the value of Danny Green. So Danny Green is available in April or March, and then playoffs.
It's also available at any point in between, or until the trade deadline as an expiring contract.
That could be an upgrade.
And there's a real question about, you could say easily to say now they should have flipped that for what they could get, back before the season. Could you have gotten a Josh Richardson or whatever for Danny Green in a 2nd-round pick? I think it's real debatable now, because I think I think a small upgrade using that contract now may not be worth taking away the small but real chance it could be used in some bigger trade around the deadline if more stuff pops off. And so I think they're probably rightly wary to move that as an expiring now. I do think they value him as a locker room guy. It's sort of hard from a distance to know how valuable that is, but I do think they care about that. I don't have a lot of faith in him being a meaningful player late in the season, but maybe he will. We'll see.
They value his broadcast chops.
Could be. I mean, in the lineage of Vince Carter and Quincy Pondexter.
That's right. Let's focus more on the players who are here and the return of Jaren Jackson Jr. He missed all 7 of his 3-point attempts in his first game, but he looked tremendous on defense, getting all the block shots. Even maybe my favorite one was ended up being a blocking foul on John Conchar. Very, very soft blocking foul. Could have been his 6th block. Jaren looked great on defense, but it's the offense that kind of remains a question mark. We knew he'd be rusty, but now, especially without Bane, it's highlighted because they need offense. They desperately need shooting. I feel like you're a little bit more optimistic on Jaren's shot overall. You throw at me the sample size is larger that he made shots than not, and I'm more like I'm not sure.
Here's what I would say. Put all the sample sizes together. So
okay.
He has taken regular season, postseason combined. He's taken some between 1,000 and 1,100 3-point shots as an NBA player. He's made about 35% of them.
Yeah.
So I will make that like I would any other player who's hit that level of attempts. I'll make that a baseline expectation, right? I won't make the 30% or the expectation. I won't make the 40. I'll put it at 35. We'll see where it goes. I think people have a negative recency bias about Jaren, and they just forget like things that happened before last season. But at the same time, the more recent stuff tends to be more meaningful. And I think there's a real question, and I don't know the answer. I want to give him a couple weeks before I start. People are really ready. A lot of people are really ready to rush with the pitchforks when he misses shots.
Yeah.
I want to give it a couple weeks and then take a look. If it remains as much of a problem as it was last season, and obviously 0 of 7 or 0 of 6, whatever. I mean, he's not going to shoot 0%, but if he's shooting 27% or something like that, I wonder whether is there something that happened with a knee injury? Because when we talk about Jaren shooting well from 3 or Jaren being more effective, inside the arc offensively, we're not talking about things he hasn't done. He's done this. He was a good paint scorer as a rookie, 19 years old, stepped right into the NBA and was a pretty good effective paint scorer. That was a different scheme, different teammates. He was a good 3-point shooter and up until he had the knee injury. And I don't know whether I wonder, and this is me being a shot doctor when I really don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
I wonder if something happened with his balance. And I talked about this on Jeff Calkins' show yesterday. When Jaren was drafted, before he ever played a game in the NBA, what Grizzlies people told me was his release looks funky, but people aren't looking at his feet, at his baseline. He's great footwork and great balance, and that's why he's a good 3-point shooter. That's why he was a good 3-point shooter in college. That's why he's going to be a good 3-point shooter in the NBA. And for 2 seasons, he was a first good, and then great 3-point shooter for a young big man. And then he had that knee injury, and it hasn't been the same since. And I don't know whether it's something about recovering from the knee injury. It's something about, the absences. I don't know what it is, but it seems to me like maybe something has gone awry with his footwork and his balance, maybe inside the arc too. And on one hand, that gives me hope. Like this is something he's done before. Maybe over time he gets that back. But on the other hand, it makes you concerned that maybe something fundamentally changed with him offensively. And so I think it's a huge thing to look for. But he has done this before. And that's why I don't, the idea he's a bad shooter. Well, he's been a bad shooter since the knee injury. He was not a bad shooter before then.
Here's where I'm at on Jaren. I didn't find the game concerning offensively. I'm like, it's Jaren. It's fine. He'll come around. But with the 3-point shot specifically, I really am a little bit confused why he hasn't just turned back the number of heat check threes he takes. His threes are wild. He's not taking a lot of wide open standstill. I caught this in the pocket and now I'm going to shoot.
This is why I want to give it a couple weeks. This dude's first game back. A lot of dudes press in their first game back from stuff. And so,
I'm not even talking about just this last game. I'm talking about all of last season. If you look at his 3-pointers, I don't know the exact breakdown between, hey, you were really wide open, your big man defender sagged off you and dared you to shoot, versus you caught this as the trailer 4 feet behind the 3-point line and let it rip. Like, maybe just chill out on the shot selection. Maybe let's turn some of our Dylan Brooks shot selection hatred towards Jaren with like, just man, take the open ones. I think you'll still space the court, even if you're not launching super deep ones or ones like off movement.
It's a thing to watch. I think you have a similar issue at the moment as you have with some of the Dylan stuff, where without Bane out there, where are the shots going? I mean, is John Morant going to take 55 shots? Like, who is creating and taking shots on this team? And it's, in some ways, the right now Jaren is similar to the Dylan Brooks thing, where he's pretty good at creating shots, not so good at making them, but he can like get shots. And a lot of these guys just can't get shots.
Yeah. Let's talk about the shot creation. We'll do this right after a short break. Wrestling fans, don't miss WWE Friday Night SmackDown. It's coming to the FedEx Forum on Friday, January 6th. Catch your favorite SmackDown superstars live, including Drew McIntyre, The New Day, Liv Morgan, Sheamus, and many more. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com or the FedEx Forum box office. All right, so the Grizzlies clearly need Jaren to provide offense, and they definitely need Dylan to provide offense, because beyond that, you got Ja, you got Dylan, you got Jaren. I mean, honestly, Tyus Jones, is Tyus Jones your third best shot creator?
Tyus Jones has always been a low usage guy. He's a good caretaker, take care of the ball, point guard, hit a few floaters. He does not generate a lot of offense for himself or other people, and he never has. And so, I think last season, one of the things we would talk about this was on your outline, which I looked at 5 minutes ago, but
I wrote it 6 minutes ago.
Right. So, one of the things last season was they generated a lot of offense off of defense, and they're not doing that this year to nearly the same degree. And so what the Grizzlies historically feasted on, like, winning the turnover game, and they've been much worse on both ends of the floor this season. They're turning the ball over more, they're generating fewer. But I think, I think the lineups last season without John Desmond tended to do better, in part, not the only reason, but in part because they were able to generate a lot of turnovers. They were able to get out in transition and create offense off of that. I think you're stuck back in a half-court basketball situation, with Tyus Jones as your point guard and without other shot creators out there. It's a real struggle.
So I looked this up based on, I believe you mentioned it, I saw it on Twitter, that the Grizzlies this year, when Desmond Bane and John Morant are off the court, they have a 95 offensive rating, which is putrid. And
zero percentile.
They're a minus 12.7 net rating. Last season, when both players were off the court, they were positive. They were a plus 4.1, which is modest, but at least they had a 114.7 offensive rating. My question is, looking at this roster right now, and I know Zaire's hurt, and that was unexpected. And Bane, that
would help a lot. That would help a lot. It would help at least a little. It might help a lot. We don't know what Zaire was going to be in year two. But Zaire's not really a guard either.
I would push back and say we hope that would help a lot. People have put a lot of trust and belief in the front office, rightly so, and in the development of Zaire. But it's like, you think Zaire's going to fix the problems?
Yeah, that's why I rephrased on the fly. I think it would help a little. We hope maybe it would help a lot, because we don't know what Zaire was going to be.
My question, and this is where, if I want to get a little panicky, I like when I look at the game against the Wizards, and we're going to have Ja for most of these games, and we're going to get Desmond Bane back. Right. But my question is, like, what is the best case plan for where the offense comes from? Where if it's not Desmond Bane, like, if it is, like, they played that Wizards game, they legitimately played. If you polled every Grizzlies fan watching, you're like, who's the best offensive player on the court for the Grizzlies? I think they would all say Tyus Jones, for like multiple lineups that were out there. And I'm like, what is the plan as far as where the offense should be coming from? In an ideal world, if a normal number of shots go in, where are we hoping the offense comes from?
That's why I'm still saying to Jaren Jackson Jr., not stop shooting, but start making. I think he's got to take those shots. He doesn't have to take those shots specifically like you're talking about. Yeah. But he has to get shots up. He has to take threes. I think Jaren has to take threes in this offense. He needs to start making them. But I just don't think there's a good answer there. I don't know what it is. Dylan Brooks like dribbling into mid-range pull-ups. Like people can hate that all they want, but sometimes that's the best you're going to get.
Yeah. What else do you want
without John Morant or Desmond Bane on the floor?
Yeah. Do you want a shot clock violation, or do you want Dylan to get it up on the backboard and hope it draws rim? Like that's kind of where we're at for some of these.
They are still a really good offensive rebounding team. So yeah, let's get some shots up. Maybe.
Yeah, it really. I would actually. So speaking of the offensive rebounding, I was thinking about this with how bad Steven Adams is on his free throws. And yes, Steven Adams is the straw that stirs the drink with the offensive rebounding. But I think Steven Adams
don't get as much out. It's not Zebo. This is not Zebo territory in terms of what you get off the offensive rebound.
No, but I think Steven Adams needs to, and he's done this on several of his makes this year. He needs to be going glass every single time. Because I think worst case scenario, you get a rebound that pops really high in the air.
On free throws, you're talking about?
On his free throws. I think Steven Adams, because he's 9 for 31 on free throws. He's last in the NBA in free throw percentage of players who actually play. I think he should be aiming at the big square every single time. And at the very worst case scenario, you get a good offensive rebounding opportunity for the team.
I'm not sure how well this comes across on television or if you're like deeper in the arena. I haven't really looked to see because I've seen it up close. And so I know what's happening. When he shoots free throws, maybe just when he shoots, but when he shoots free throws, he pushes the ball off the heel of his hand, not off the fingers. And I've stood in practices and pregame shoot arounds and watched this, and I want to go out on the floor and intervene and say, like, wait a minute, like these fingers, these 5 things that are flying around, that's what should be pushing the ball. I don't understand it.
In the Pelicans game, what were your takeaways as far as the rotation decisions that were made? Specifically, the use of Conchar for a lot. They didn't go to the Tyus and Ja minutes that much. Also, they went with Roddy over LaRavia, and then Steven Adams didn't come back into close. Out of those things, which one of those kind of stood out to you?
I haven't really thought about the Conchar Ja Tyus stuff. So I've not committed that to deep study. I'll set that aside. The Steven Adams thing, I was curious about why he didn't come back in. I mean, sitting your big late in games is a thing that has happened with the Grizzlies a lot. But it's like Jaren's first game back. And, I didn't really, that seems worth second guessing to me. The LaRavia Roddy thing is the most interesting of those. I think I see them as fairly close on the positional spectrum. I think maybe the Grizzlies see them a little bit further apart on the positional spectrum than I do. And so it looked like, well, Jaren's back. And so that pushes LaRavia down because he's a quote unquote big, and Bane is out. And that pushes Roddy up because he's a quote unquote wing. And Roddy is more dynamic. He will do more stuff for good or ill, but he will do more stuff. But I don't see a big difference between those two, frankly, positionally. First, let me just say it could go either way. I don't have a firm conviction about their futures. I think right now the best answer would probably be neither. But I like LaRavia's game personally more than Roddy's, significantly more. I think I have a lot of skepticism about Roddy's game in the NBA. But the other thing is that I did this on Jeff Hawkins' show locally, I think yesterday. So this is as of yesterday, not as of today. I know these things change every day. But as of yesterday, David Roddy and Jake LaRavia were 8th and 14th in total minutes played by rookies this season. Grizzlies won 56 games last year. They had 2 of the top 15 players in rookie minutes so far. The only other player of the 15 who is employed by a team that was in the playoffs last season is Christian Koloko of Toronto, who's like 9th. It is not normal for this many minutes to be taken up by post lottery pick rookies on a team coming off the kind of season the Grizzlies came off of. Now, part of that is the injury stuff with Zaire being out, but they've been forced to depend on these guys, and they went into the season. This gets back to our initial discussion about the roster stuff. They went into the season, with late pick rookies in that 11, 12 man kind of positions. And in those positions, you're going to play like just about every night because there's always somebody hurt. But to get back to that specific game, I'm not saying the game would have gone differently, but I would prioritize LaRavia over Roddy, even at small forward.
Yeah, I'm not passionate yet. I feel like that's where I'm on with most of these Grizzlies lineup decisions, where it's like I actually understand what they're thinking with almost every lineup decision that happens.
Oh no, I do too.
And I'm not like
sure.
I'm not cringing yet at
Right.
any specific lineups that come in like I have in previous seasons. The one that I wish they would kind of open their minds to that we haven't done yet, and I don't know if they will.
Aldama at the 3. Is that where you're going?
What did you say?
Aldama at the 3. Is
Yeah,
that where you're
you
going?
got me.
Okay.
Yeah, you read my mind, because they've said before, Taylor Jenkins has said before, like, oh, we don't have positions, like we don't have, but it's like you do, because you don't normally mix your streams of, if a guy's in the front court rotation, like Kyle Anderson in previous seasons, they're like really hesitant to put him in at the 3. But I do think
this is what I'm saying with LaRavia. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I like LaRavia at the 3 just fine, but like I think Aldama at the 3 with Brandon and Jaren, man, I'm into that, especially when we have what we have right now, which we don't have better options to fill the 2 and 3 minutes.
I can say I like LaRavia's game better, and I do, but LaRavia is not going to help your shot creation like at all.
No, he doesn't. That's the thing where people are like, oh, we got to score. We got to put LaRavia out there. It's like, have you seen his per 36 scoring? It's like lower than Steven Adams.
So
like,
Roddy's going to do more offensively in terms of generating stuff.
Yeah.
I just think he kills your defense. The numbers say that, and when I watch him play, that's what I see. I'm not sure he can guard anywhere in the NBA. And so, like, I'm not sure that, like, throw out Jaren, Brandon, and Santi together. I got no problem with that. You could space Santi and Jaren and let Brandon, play down the middle. And, like, I'm not sure that Jaren and Santi can't create stuff off the dribble and attack closeouts, any worse than like Jake LaRavia is going to, right?
Honestly, Santi Aldama, I feel like, can get in the paint and get a shot off as well as anyone on the roster, outside of Ja and Desmond. Like, I was joking about how, like, it's how gangly and uncoordinated he feels at times, especially finishing, but like he can. Normally, whoever they put on him, he can take one dribble and do a long stride and get into the paint. And desperate times call for desperate measures.
I just want to say, and I'm probably ruining it, but I think it's very respectable of us to have talked this much about shot creation problems with Desmond Bane being out and not called for Junior Lofton to be playing.
It's just we're realists, if nothing else. No, so one of the big issues, we'll close with this. The last 3 halves, there was a healthy game, relatively healthy game against the Timberwolves. Then there was a no Bane against the Wizards, and then there was no Bane against the Pelicans. In all 3 of those games, the Grizzlies scored 42 or fewer points in the second half. Is that just a random blip? Is that teams focusing on Ja in the 2 games he played, where they're like, second half they kind of lock down and they take away Ja Morant a little bit more? Or is it just this random, it's a 3-game sample size, who cares?
My instinct is the 3-game sample size in terms of the first half, second half, but I could be wrong. I have not committed that question to study, so there may be something there. I think that bears watching going forward.
Yeah, my question for the Grizzlies is without Bane, is it bad shooting luck or bad shooters shooting? And I feel like the arrow is pointing to bad shooters shooting, but like they're gonna make more 3-pointers, and the Pelicans and Wizards specifically made way more than they normally make in a game.
Well, that's the half of the equation that I believe in, the gravity part more than the first half. Honestly, is that I don't disagree. Taylor Jenkins, was like, it was lobbed up for him to criticize his defense after the New Orleans game. And they've been pretty bad defensively most of this season, and he chose not to do so. And I think that was, when I watched that game against the Pelicans, my first thought was not, the problem here is the defense, although I'm not saying it was good, but that was not, to me, it was, they can't score when Ja's not on the floor. That, to me, that was the story of that game. It wasn't the Grizzlies defense letting the Pelicans make a lot of these threes. They had a good shooting night. The defense could have been better, but to me, that wasn't the thing.
I agree completely. I thought that it was a good defensive effort. You let CJ McCollum go off, especially in that third quarter. And like, yeah, it's a defensive problem if John Konchar's chasing CJ McCollum off screens, but like also, what are you going to do? So yeah, they I feel like they played well enough on defense to win if the offense would have been there. But Chris, thanks, man, for coming on. I appreciate you as always, talking Grizzlies. Oh, by the way, what's your thought on I'm terrified of this Thunder game. I know we're in like the little downward swing because we lost 2 games, but the Thunder look awesome.
I thought on your on the outline you were going to ask big picture about that, not just about Friday night. Like, is this the sleeping giant, but with all their draft picks and Chet and everything else?
They're so good. Like their last 10 games, they're awesome. And the Grizzlies are not playing awesome. So it's going to be.
Well, I mean, the Shea thing, I mean, people in Memphis and the Bane injury sort of, puts a little bit of kibosh on that. But I think people in Memphis were going to be in for a rude awakening about the Desmond Bane All-Star campaign, because they're not realizing how good the guards are in the West this year.
Oh yeah.
And at this point, you can start arguing Shea versus Ja, like in, your MVP All NBA rankings, right?
No, like as of this Thursday morning, Shea's ahead of Ja, I would say, in the MVP. Shea's numbers are 87 Jordan. Like, he's got two steals and 1.5 blocks per game, and he's 55, 40, 90. Like,
that'll be fun though. I now regret my because I didn't see the Jaren thing coming back so well at this point, but the my matchup of the week was like the Grizzlies guards against Shea in terms of the quality comparison. The real matchup is Shea driving to the rim against Jaren. That's gonna be fun. That's gonna be good basketball, man.
Shea, who averages more points in the paint than Ja did last year, taking away Ja's guard scoring in the paint title, his crown, his belt. Anyways, listeners out there, go check out the Daily Memphian's Grizzlies coverage, and then I'll be on your show in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, post Thanksgiving, we'll get back together.
Oh yeah, it's Thanksgiving. That's soon. Yeah. All right, we'll do it. Thanks, man.
Thanks.